Were you like me and decided maybe not to play Harvestella because of the reviews online? I decided to bite the bullet and play the game, and I realized that I disagree with most of the reviews, and I am really loving this game so far. But it made me realize that this game is not for everyone, so I'm going to be talking to you about whether this game is for you based on your particular interests or based on my own interests. So I'm going to go through 3 reasons you may want to pick up Harvestella. Reason number 1, you really like Rune Factory. This game is Square Enix's attempt to go into the farm simulation space, very similar to Rune Factory, Harvest Moon, or Story of Seasons, or Stardew Valley. This is a cozy game, a lot like Animal Crossing. And in reviews, you might see that a common complaint is that this game is full game price, yet it doesn't have incredibly good graphics, nor does it have voice acting, or things that you might expect from a big budget title. Like it lacks polish, such as just lacks of sound effects. The characters in the game also don't even make any grunts. It would be really helpful to hear them make some kind of noise or have some kind of impression of how they talk, but you don't really get that. This game kind of feels like it's meant to be handheld. It would be great on the Steam Deck or on the Switch, something that you would want to play in bed. I'm somebody who is very quick to get bored of games and to drop them, and so an important element for me in a playable game is differences in kind. You have some context switching in the game, like you're doing some farming and then you're doing some battling and classic RPG stuff. I have played games like Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons, as well as Stardew Valley, and I have had a hard time keeping up with those games because of the pure farming simulation part of it. So when Rune Factory came out, it completely blew my mind. It would tear through hours of my day because of that balance between RPG and farm sim. I have found that certain genres, when combined, then become incredibly appealing. For example, my favorite Ace Attorney game is the crossover with Professor Layton, because I think Professor Layton, by itself, I have never finished one of the games, because I found the puzzles too repetitive. In Ace Attorney, even though I love the story, I have stopped playing the game during the investigations because I thought those got dry. But then with Professor Layton and Ace Attorney combined together, they were a magical game. The farm sim and RPG, I believe, is also a magical formula. In Harvestella, I think gets the balance right. In Harvestella, days are very short, so you have to plan your time well, and you typically won't get everything done in one day, which is perfect. Money is also very well balanced in the game. You start off with a substantial amount of challenge. Your first task is to just make a hammer, and it is unlikely that you'll be able to get all of the materials to even make that hammer in one day, so over multiple days you need to go back to the same spot to find more materials to make a hammer, to clear the rocks, to be able to farm more. I believe a good farm sim starts off with a good amount of challenge, and this game definitely achieves that. The game is slow getting started, there is a lot of dialogue, and there's a lot of story and cutscene. And the tie-in from the farm to the game is like very, very thin. It really is like, oh, we need to investigate this crystal thing that fell from the sky. And also, here's some seeds, and there's a patch of land. I guess you could do something with it. There is no dying grandpa. There is no inheritance. You're just like, oh, here's a farm. All right, here is reason number 2, and it might surprise you. I think that you would like Harvestella if you are a fan of the style of Final Fantasy XIV, or of classic Final Fantasy. The illustrations of the characters are very reminiscent of old school Final Fantasy. They make me think of Final Fantasy Tactics. Also, a lot like Final Fantasy XIV, you have mounts in Harvestella. You can ride magical creatures in the game. The game also has action RPG combat, and on top of that, you're able to switch between character classes immediately. So you can be fighting as a mage with magic and then switch over to a fighter class and use your sword to beat on enemies. The combat in this game is so much more detailed than Rune Factory. You're also able to get job points based on the classes that you're using, and then you're able to gain more abilities. And you use these abilities a lot like an MMO, where you trigger the ability and then there's a cooldown, and then you can trigger that ability again. But again, I think Harvestella balances this really well, because the combat in this game is not very difficult. That's because this game isn't centered on the combat, it's only a piece of the game. Plus, Harvestella is meant to be a cozy game that is not challenging. You're not dying all the time, needing Dr. Crest to come help you. I know that a job class system is a sought after, enjoyed RPG mechanic that is in Final Fantasy games. Now for the third reason you may like Harvestella. Surprisingly, if you like the Persona games. Now, in Rune Factory and in Harvest Moon and in all of the games where you have social elements, I have always been disappointed by them. Because you hear the same couple lines of dialogue over and over, and you don't get that depth of character. In Harvestella, the stories behind these characters are much richer, and the bonds that you develop will be more interesting. This will not be that apparent when you start playing the game. The characters are not revealing everything about themselves in the beginning, and you will get to know them over time. Just like in a Harvest Moon, you're able to get married in the game. And the marriage component, while there aren't very many marriage candidates, is a richer experience, and I have always longed to have a richer experience with that marriage component. I want to feel like I am socializing with real people and not just avatars. Also, like Persona 4 or other games like that, I think that there are tropes in the story that are similar to a Persona 4 game. There is a religion that may be overstepping in its power. There is a mysterious other world. There is an angel that is like an Igor. You know, very fantasy plot, but it's a lot more complex than what you might expect from a Rune Factory. So if you've listened this far, then I would recommend ignoring the Metacritic score and just taking the plunge, because this game is incredibly rich and I'm really enjoying it so far. And if you want to join me, I'm streaming it currently on Twitch. I would love to see you there. And if you're new to my content, I have mostly been putting out Final Fantasy X and X-2 stuff so far. If you like Final Fantasy X, then you may like my video on 21 facts that are in the Final Fantasy X Ultimania that you may not have heard about. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time! Bye!